Hello and welcome. In this video, I want to show you one way by which we can unsubscribe from RxJS observables in an Angular application. There are multiple ways by which that can be achieved using even RxJS operators. But I'm going to show you how we can use a module called SubSink. So before we get started, you can go to npmjs.com. I want to show you the module that will be used. You can search for SubSink. So search for SubSink right here. And this is the module that will be used. It says RxJS subscription sync for unsubscribing gracefully in a component. So this basically is a dead simple class to absorb RxJS subscriptions in an array. So we are going to see how to use this module to unsubscribe from RxJS observable. But before we install this, we need to create our project. So open your terminal and navigate to wherever you want to save your project. So we're going to create the project using this Angular CLI command, which is ng new, I can call it sub-sync right here. So ng new sub-sync. Wait for this to start. We are not going to have any kind of routing or navigation. You can either type yes or no. So I'll just put yes. For the style, we are not going to add any specific style. We're just going to use Bootstrap. You can use CSS or SCSS. So wait for this to create the project. So now I have the project created. So I just need to cd into the project. And then I'll open it up with VS Code. That is the editor that I'll be using. So in this video, I'm going to show you why we need to unsubscribe from an RxJS observable in Angular, and also how we can use the SubSync module. I already showed you the SubSync module. We're going to see how to use this to unsubscribe. And note, there are multiple ways by which we can unsubscribe from RxJS observable. This is just one way, using the SubSync. In a later video, I'm going to show you the different methods we can use to unsubscribe from RxJS observables, even using RxJS operators. But for now, we're going to work with this SubSync. So now I have this right here. So this is just the typical Angular project. We have the end-to-end directory, the node modules, the source, which is where we are going to be working in. And inside the source directory, we have our app. Here we just have the app routing module. Like I said, adding this is optional at this point because we are not adding any routing property. We have the app components.css, the HTML, the spec, the class, and the module. Now what I'm going to do is I'll open the terminal right here and then run the ng serve command so that we have the application displayed in the browser. Just run ng serve, or you can use npm start, whichever one. If you're using yarn, you can say yarn start or just yarn. So I'm going to run npm start, and then we open it up in the browser. Under the hood, it runs this ng serve command. So I have the application running. Now we need to visit this port 4200. I can just click Control and then follow this link right here. Let me close one of these. Now this is how the application looks. So what we are going to do, it's going to be very simple. I'll create two components and then I'll add the components as child components to this component being displayed here, which is this app.component.html. And then I'm going to create a service file. Now let's get started with creating the components and the service file. So open a new terminal inside the project. If you're using VS Code, you can do that. So what I want to do is I'll run the ng generate command. So I'll generate the components and also the service. So I'll say ng generate component, or C for short. Then I want it inside the components directory, and I'll call it card. So this is going to be the first component I will create. So I have the first component created. You can see it right inside the components directory. there's a component called card. Then the next one I want to create, I'll call it SubSink right here. So wait for these components to be created. Now, I believe you understand how this ng generate command works. You can search the Angular CLI documentation to see how this ng generate command works. Now we've created components. We can use this ng generate to create directives, to create pipes, to create services. So now let's create a service. So I'll say ng generate service S for short. Then I'll create it inside the services directory, and I'll call it SubSink. Now I don't want this to have its own directory, so I will use the flat option, and I don't want it to create a spec file, so I'll say -- skip tests, set it equal to true. So this first command here will not allow this ng generate command to create a directory just like it did for this component. It's just going to create the services directory and then create this required file, and then this skip test will prevent it from adding a spec file. You can see right here it's created the spec file, so I don't want the spec file, so I'll use -- skip test set to true. So I'll wait for this to generate the services file. So what we're going to do inside this services file is just simple. Right here you can see you just created only one file. We're just going to create two methods right here inside this subsink.service.ts file. So, but the first thing is, let's install Bootstrap. So I'll open the terminal once more, and I'll run npm install Bootstrap right here. You can add a safe flag if you want, or you can leave it out. So I want to install Bootstrap so that we can just use it to add the components in the HTML file. So here I have Bootstrap installed. Now to use that, we can go to our styles.css. Now if you don't want to install Bootstrap, you can go ahead, copy the CDN link, and then go into your index.html and add it right here. But since we already installed, I'll just go to my styles.scss, and then here I'm going to add import. So let me import it here, then add this tilde, then bootstrap /dist /css /bootstrap.main.css. So what this will do is it will go into the node modules directory, then look for the directory called bootstrap, then inside go to dist css, then look for the bootstrap.main.css file. So with this now we have Bootstrap available in our application. Now let's go to the browser. What I want to use here is the Bootstrap card. So let me go to the browser, Bootstrap for cards. Let's see. Let's copy or open one of these. Let's try it out. We want something like this. So let me just scroll down somewhere here. We can just copy something like this. So one of these, maybe this. So you can copy this right here and then go to your page. So here I will just add a div with class call, and inside I'll paste the code we just copied. So this is just a div with class call, then div class card test center, set the width. I can increase this to 20. Then here I have the card title, the card test. In fact, let's take all this out. Before the card body, I'll just add a div with class. I'll call it card header. Let me just add a test right now. So header. Now to use this Remember I said we are going to use the components that we create as child components of our main component, which is this app.components.html. So right here, I'm going to remove this content. So take out this content and then add a div, set the class to container, and I can add a style, add an inline style. If you don't want to do this, you can just add the inline style probably in your styles.scss. It's going to be made available throughout the whole project, but just for simplicity's sake, I want to add it right here, and I'll set the text align property to center right here. Then here we are going to add a form inside this div with class container. We are going to add a form, but before we get to that part, I would just add the child component. So I'll say Angular SubSink example. So I'll add a div with class row and empty that -12. Then after that, this is where we're going to add our form. Then after that, I'll add another div. This is going to hold the components we just created. So let me add a class row, and I'll set this to empty-5. Now let's get the selector. The selector is app-card. So I'm going to add it right here, app-card right here. So let me save now and then go to the browser. Okay, now you can see the components, but what I want to do, let me just add some style, or simply just change the color. So for this div, I'll add a BG primary color and MB, or we can leave that out. So the background color for this card is going to be blue. Let's see how it looks. Okay, right here. And then also text white. Save this. Go to the browser. Okay, now this is how the card looks. Now that I have this card, we are going to change this text. So what I want to do next is to add the inputs. So I'll add a form with an input and some buttons so that we can add the text, allow the text to be displayed, and then we can hide or we can destroy this component or make the component active. So let me go back, close all of this. So here inside this div, I want to add a form. So I'm going to add a form, and this is going to be an inline form. So set a class. So class right here is going to be form dash inline. You can search for this right here, look for forms. Yeah, for Bootstrap forms, and then you can look for inline form or whatever type of form you want to use, whether horizontal or inline, whatever, you can just copy and then paste it right here. But what I want to do is add this, set a class here of form dash group and mx-xm-3. These are classes from Bootstrap, and here I'm going to add the input. Now the input is going to take the type. This is going to be test. The class, which is form dash control. Then I want to add a property so that I can use this property to get the value from this input. You can decide to use ng model if you want. If you can decide to use reactive forms, whatever, but I want to make it simple, so I will just add the hash, then the field property, and then you can set a placeholder. I'll say message right here. Then the next things that I want to do, let me copy and paste this right here. Then I'll make this a button. So I'm going to have 3 buttons. So this is going to be of type button right here, and set the class to btn-primary. Then I will just add it as capitalize, just the text. So what we are going to do is, when this button is clicked, whatever text is added here, we are going to just get the first letter from the word and then capitalize it. We're going to add a click here, but let's just add the buttons. So let me duplicate this. Then I'll change this to danger. Then I'll set the text to close card. So these buttons will be used to destroy the components right here, and then this open cards. Then I can change this to success or whatever you want. So I have these forms with the input and the different buttons. Save. Let's see how it looks. Now you can see right here. Okay. So I have the input. So whatever we type in here, we are going to display the message here. When we click this button, then we can use this button to destroy this component. We can use this button here to reinitialize or make the component active. Now we're going to work on aligning this later. Let's just add the functionality. So now that we have this form, what I want to do is go into my services file. Like I said, we are going to just create 2 methods. Now, in Angular, when you create a new service, you need to add it either to the project or the app's own root module, which is this app.module.ts file, add it into the providers array. But we don't need to do that. The reason is because here we have this provided in property set to root. Now this will make this service file automatically be injected into this providers array, and it will be made available throughout the project. But if you want to use this service only in a specific file, you can add it into the components property. You can come right here and add a providers array and then add that particular service. Now, and then you can remove this. You can remove this property if you want to use it only in a specific file. But if you want it available throughout your whole application, you can just leave it here without worrying about adding it into your app.module.ts file. So right here, what I want to do is simple. I'm going to create the capitalized first letter function and also a function that will be used to get the values. So first, I can create a private variable, or you can leave it. I'll call it capitalize first letter. I'll put the dollar symbol to note that this is an observable and is going to be equal to new subject. So we are using this subject from RxJS. So what this subject does basically is it acts as both an observable and an observer. So from it we can create an observable, and through this subject we can also subscribe to the observable. So this capitalized first letter will be set equal to new subject, and you can see is imported from RxJS. If you don't want to use subject, you can decide to use observable or whatever you want. Then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to create the capitalize first letter method. Now this is going to take a word or a value of type string right here. So what I want to do is this value here, I'll just get the first letter and then capitalize it. But first I'll say if type of value is equal to undefined, then you can just simply return. So we are not going to execute anything further, but then let string equal to word at index 0. So we get the value at index 0, or we get the value at the index 0 using char at right here. Instead of word, sorry, this is supposed to be value. So I want to use this to get the value at this particular index here. Using this method returns the character at the specified index. Now if you don't want to do this, you can just remove, let's remove this. We can only use this char at. Let's use this char at method. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to convert it to uppercase and then concatenate it to the other parts of the string. So string will then become string when string dot to uppercase. Here I'm using the ternary operator, then plus value dot slice at index 1. Now otherwise return an empty string. So what I've done right here is, after converting the string or this first character to uppercase and concatenating it to the other parts, when this is available, then we set it equal to the string value. Otherwise we set this to an empty string. So this is just like saying if string is available, if we have this string value, then perform this. But if we don't have it, then set this string to an empty string right here. Then the next thing I want to do is just call this dot capitalize first letter dot next. Now to pass a value when using this subject, you can call this next method. So all we just need to do is pass in the string. So right here, we are using this subject. After converting this string, we call the capitalize first letter dot next method and we pass in the string. You can see right here subject dot next and it takes in the value right here. You can see. Now we have this method. The next thing I want to do is I'll set this or get string or whatever function you want to call it or name you want to call it. Now this is just going to be return this dot capitalize first letter. So just imagine or assume that after calling this method, wherever we are going to call it, this subject is going to hold a value, and that value is going to be whatever we pass into this next method. And then when we call this get string, it's going to return whatever value this property holds. So if it holds a string, then when we call this get string method, it's going to return that string right here. So when we call this capitalized first letter, we are setting or passing the string into this next method, and then that value is being held by this capitalized first letter property. And then when we call the get string or whatever method name you want to call this, we are going to return whatever is held by this property. So this is just all we want inside our SubSink service. Now to use this, we go into our app.component.ts. Remember, we already have the form. We already added this form right here. Now we need to add the methods on these functions or these properties or buttons, like the capitalize, close card, open card right here. So I'm going to save this. Now open the app.component.ts. Here it doesn't have the constructor, so we need to add the constructor so that we can inject the service. So I'll say private SubSink service of type SubSink service. Now you can see here it's imported. I don't need this title, I can take that out. But here I'm going to create a property called show cards. It's going to be a boolean, and I'll set it to true. So by default, this property has a value set to true. Then the next thing I want to do is I'll create a method called capitalize first letter. Now note this here could be any function, or this function could have any functionality that you want. Probably you can decide to convert all to uppercase, or if they're all low uppercase, you convert it to lowercase, or whatever you want to do right here. What is most important is that you pass the result into this next method right here. Then this is going to take the value. So here what I just need to do is this dot SubSink service dot capitalized first letter and passing the value. So you can see now that we are calling this method right here and passing in the value, which is this value right here. Then the next thing I want to do is I'll call display cards. Now this method will be used to destroy or show the cards. So this dot show cards, I'll set it to false because by default it is true. Then this is hide cards. Then it's going to be this dot show cards equal to false. So when this is called, it's going to show the cards. Let me set this to true. Then when this is called, it's going to hide the cards or destroy the cards. So now I'll save this, go to my app components.html. Now let me add this method. Here on this button that says capitalize, I'll add the click and I'll set this equal to capitalize first letter. Now remember we added this field property. Here we are going to pass field dot value. Like I said, you can decide to use ng model or reactive forms, but here I'm just doing it so that we don't add too much. Then the next thing here is click, set it equal to this is going to be hide cards, while this is going to be display cards. Click, then this is display cards. Like I said, when this is clicked, it's going to hide the child components, and when this is clicked, it's going to display. But how do we do that? We need to use this show cards. So then on this child component, I'll add the ng if, and I'll set it equal to show cards right here. Now, depending on the method that is called, it will set the value either to true or false. So if it is true, display. If it is false, hide. So let me save this now and then go back here. Let's see. So if I click this, you can see the component has been hidden, the component has been displayed. So let me inspect. I want to show you something here in the browser. So right here, I have this component. You can see I have this app component right here. Now, when I click on close, you can see the component has been destroyed. The component is no more displayed here in the DOM. When I click open, you can see now the component is now active. So we destroy. When you hide this ngIf, so the idea of this ngIf is not just to hide, but to remove totally from the DOM. So once this is set to false, it's going to remove, not just hiding the component, but it's going to remove the component from the DOM. If you are using vanilla JavaScript and probably you are using the if statement on a component, it's just going to hide it. The component will still remain in the DOM, but it won't be displayed. But if you are using ngIf will basically remove the component from the DOM. That is why when I click open, you can see we have the app card component here. When I click close, the component is destroyed right here. Now we have that out of the way. Now let's try to see how we can add the text here. So whatever the user types, we add it here. So I'll go into my components, card, then card.components.ts file. So the first thing I want to do is let me import the SubSink service right here. So I have it imported. Then I'm going to create two properties. The first is name, and I will say no unsubscribe component, and then the message will be of type string. So here the name of this component here, so that we can be able to differentiate or distinguish between this component and the other component we're going to create. I'll set the name to no unsubscribe component. Here we are not going to unsubscribe, and we're going to see the result in the browser. So in this ng on init, this is where I'm going to call this get string. Remember that this method is called inside our app.component.ts, and because this is an observable, we can subscribe to it from anywhere inside the application or from any other component. So the next thing I need to do is this.subsink service.get string right here, and then .subscribe. I'll set the type to string, and then what I want to do is this.message equal to message right here, and let me do a console.log. So this is the result that we are going to see in the browser's console. So here this is going to be this.name, the name of the component, and the message right here. So we are going to see this in the browser's console. I can save this, open the component, change this to name, and then change this to message. So now we have this functionality. So basically what I just did was to inject this SubSink service into the constructor for this card component class, set two properties, name and message. Then in the ng on init, I'm subscribing to the get string method. You can see we have this get string method right here. So I am subscribing to it, and then here setting the message or whatever is returned. Remember, we pass the string, the result, into this nest. Whatever is returned, we set it equal to this message, and we are console.logging these values. So these are the values we are going to see. Now we are not unsubscribing from this. Now let's go to the browser to test this out. So now I will open the console. Let me close this right here, clear this part. Now you can see we don't have any test, but we have the name, no unsubscribe component. Now let's see what's going to happen here in the console. Now I'm going to add a test here. Now you can see it has been capitalized and displayed. Now the console.log message is displayed right here. If I keep on clicking on this capitalize, you can see right here that the method is being subscribed to. You can see that this value here is being incremented right here. Now this is usual behavior. This is usual because the component is still active. So because it's still active, we can subscribe to this observable right here. So this is a usual behavior. Now let me clear this. Click, we can still subscribe. Now if I click here, now the component has been destroyed. I showed you previously right here, we don't have that component anymore. The component has been destroyed. Now let me click here. You can see, even though the component has been destroyed, it is still subscribing to the observable. This is not a normal behavior. This is not how it's supposed to behave. Now, this is where the idea of unsubscribing from RxJS observable comes in. Now, if we continue doing this, even though the component has been destroyed, it will always continue to subscribe to the observable. If we navigate away from this component, let's assume we have other pages. If we navigate away, that component is destroyed, and then when we come back to it, it's going to continue subscribing to it, because when the component was destroyed, we did not unsubscribe from this observable, and this can cause an issue like the memory leak issue. So if this continues right here, you can see it just keeps on subscribing to this. Now it will get to a point whereby the browser might become very unresponsive because we have too many subscriptions right here, and this console.log value, it will make the browser become unresponsive. So this is where the idea of unsubscribing, even though we can see the component has been destroyed, we don't have the component displayed in the DOM, we are still subscribing to the observable. This is not a normal behavior. This is where the SubSink module comes into play. Like I said, there are other ways we can unsubscribe, but I want to show you how we can use this SubSink. Now, to use this SubSink, we need to install the module right here. So you can just copy this and then open your terminal right here and then install the SubSink module. Now, if you look at what it says here, it says the RxJS subscription sync for unsubscribing gracefully in a component. And how or at what point do we need to unsubscribe? Now, we need to unsubscribe at the point when the component is being destroyed. And that is done inside the ng on destroy lifecycle hook. In Angular, a component is destroyed when it is removed from the DOM. And the ng on destroy lifecycle method is triggered when a component is destroyed, and that is the point where we need to unsubscribe from our observable. So let me check if this has been installed. Yes, I have the module now installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new component quickly. So I'll create a new component. Okay, I already have the component here, so I don't need to create a new component. I already have the SubSink component right here. So what I need to do is I'll copy this, then go to my SubSink right here, then paste. I'm going to get error because I don't have this defined. So let's define this. So I'll say name, set it equal to SubSink components 1 test. Then, or let me call it something different. First, or name first, or first name. Let me just leave it at name. Then the next one is going to be message. This is going to be of type string. Now, I have both defined. Should have the errors cleared. Let's go save this. Go into your app.components.html. Now I'm going to duplicate this, but remove this here. So I'll call app.subsync, and then I'll use this ng if so that we can destroy the component or hide the component. So I have my app subsync as a child right here as well. So let's see that. So let me change the color of this. I'll change this to success, BG success right here. So now you can see both components. I have the no subscribe, unsubscribe component and the subsync component 1. So what I want to do next is here in the ng on init, we need to subscribe to the get sync method. Now to use this, after installing, we need to import, and then you will create a new instance of the subsync class. But then it says call unsubscribe to unsubscribe from all of them as you would do your components library on mount or on destroy lifecycle event. So right here, I'm going to import SubSink from SubSink right here. SubSink from SubSink. Then the next thing is create a new instance of this SubSink. I can make it private. I'll call it subs. Set it equal to new SubSink right here. Now we can inject the SubSink service right here. So we have the SubSink service imported and injected. So what I want to do is set this.sub.sync equal to this.subsync service dot get string right here, and then we subscribe to it. I can pass the message, set the type to string right here. So we are going to do the same thing we did here in our card. So let me just copy this part and then paste here so that we can see the console value. So what I just did here is use the sync or the sync property from this SubSync instance and set it equal to the observable that or the method we want to subscribe to. So this.subs.sync, and this.subs is an instance we defined right here, and then this is equal to the get string from the substring service, and we subscribe to it. Now we are not unsubscribing. Let me just save this now and let's see right here. So I'm going to type in testing. Now you can see the values are being displayed here, and if you check the console, we have two console values. The first console value is for the no unsubscribe component, then the second is for the SubSync component 1. Now if I click on this capitalize again, you can see they are still being subscribed to because they are active. If I destroy both components, click, they are still being subscribed to even though they have been destroyed. But now let us unsubscribe from this other component. To do that is very simple. Here you just need to implement the onDestroy right here, and then you call ng onDestroy. Now, like I said, whenever a component is destroyed, this method or this lifecycle hook is usually called, and then here you can do whatever you want to do, like unsubscribing from an observable at the point when the component is getting destroyed. So here I'll just call this.subs.onSubscribe right here. So this.subs.onSubscribe. So when this component is destroyed and when this lifecycle method is called, we are going to unsubscribe from the observable right here, whatever we added into this.subs.link. Now I'm going to save this. Let's try this out one more time in the browser. So I can just type a message here, then click capitalize right here. Now destroy, then click. Now you can see I only have just one subscription remaining right here. Now if I open and then capitalize, you can see we have two subscriptions. If I destroy both components, click capitalize, you can see I have only the component that we are not unsubscribing from being displayed. So right now, this is a way you can use the SubSync module to unsubscribe from your observable. Now, what about if we have more than one component or more than one subscriptions we want to take care of inside this class? What you would think is just maybe copy this or duplicate this. Yeah. What about if you have more than two? You will just continue duplicating. You just continue duplicating like this, which doesn't really look good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add another component here. So you can just copy this or copy this part right here. I'll change this to name 2. Just call it whatever you want. It's not yet defined. Now go to my SubSink. So this is going to be name 2, then subcomponent 2. And I'll change this to message of type string. Now, like I said, what you would want to do is quickly just duplicate this part. Yeah, it's going to work. So I'll just change this to message right here and change this to name 2. So this .subs.sync, we want to unsubscribe from this. Let's assume this is a different method. So, and we have it defined right here. So I'm going to save this now. Let's go back. You can see we have 2 components. And let me just separate both components right here. Let me take this out. Div core, save, then go back right here. Just run for testing. Let's just put this BR tag. Okay, now we can see both components are separated. I can change this to 1 right here. Okay, now you can see we have all 3 components. So let me just add this. Now you can see I have the no unsubscribe component message, the SubSync component 1, the SubSync component 2. Now if I destroy all 3 components, click on capitalize, right here you can see I only have the message for the no unsubscribe component. Now this is one way you can do this, but there is another way or another method that can be used from this SubSync. So basically there is an add method that is just going to add every of those subscriptions into an array, because what this does behind or under the hood is it adds all of these subscriptions to an array, and then when the unsubscribe method is called in the ng onDestroy, it unsubscribes from all of the observables added into the array. Just like how it says here, RxJS subscriptions, or here subscript is a dead simple class to absorb RxJS subscriptions in an array. So it basically, when you add, it pushes the subscriptions into an array. So if you have 10 subscriptions in the array, then when the unsubscribe method is called, it's going to unsubscribe from all of those subscriptions at the same time. So what I want to do is I'm going to create another method so I can show you how we can use the add method. So I'll just call this SubSync subscriptions right here. So here I'll say this.subs.add. Now this add is a method. Right here you can see add subscriptions to the tracked subscriptions. It takes in subscriptions of type subscription like or maybe an observable or a subject. And then here all I need to do is copy this subscription, add it right here, then separate by a comma, and then copy this other part, add it here as well. So now I can comment this part. So we just use this.subs.add right here, and then we are adding all of the subscriptions into this method. All you just need to do is this.subsync subscriptions. So here we just have a method. If you have multiple subscriptions, you just need to add them into this add method right here, and then you call the SubSync subscriptions, probably in the ng-onInit or any other method where you need to use this. So now if we have 3 or 4 other subscriptions, I just need to add them here. Even though they look too much. It looks much better. So let me just undo that. I'll just leave the other two subscriptions. So now if I go back to the browser, let's try this. So click capitalize. Now you can see I have the tests all displayed and I have the results here. Now if I destroy the components and click capitalize, right now you can see I just have only one message displayed for the components that we are not unsubscribing from. So now this is the way you can use the SubSink module to unsubscribe from RxJS observables. And it is very advisable that if you're building an Angular application that you unsubscribe from it or from any other RxJS observable you might have in the application. Whether you are using maybe an HTTP observable or the router events or router params or whatever, you need to unsubscribe from it so as to avoid any potential memory leaks. Now, if we leave this, whenever we go back to this, we leave this component and we go back, it's going to continue subscribing to this component. Even when we leave, it's going to come under the hood, it's going to continue subscribing to it, because after the component was destroyed, there was no way it was unsubscribed from. So these subscriptions will just continue. So I just show you one more time. Capitalize, we have them displayed. Destroy the components, we just have only one here displayed. So at this point, I want to say thank you very much for watching this video. And if you have any questions, you can drop the question in the comment section. And also the code for this lecture will be made available in the description section of this video.